Welcome to a special edition of the Darden Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Jingjing Li. Jingjing is a faculty member at the McIntyre School of Commerce here at the University of Virginia, and she is also one of the academic heads for the MS in Business Analytics program, a partner program between the Darden School of Business and the McIntyre School of Commerce. I recently connected with Jingjing to talk more about her background, her research in artificial intelligence, what she loves about the MSBA program, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Jingjing Li. Jingjing, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. How are you doing? How's everything going?
Very good. Yeah, things get started. I'm teaching undergraduate two classes this semester about foundations of machine learning and AI.
All right. And so you have a very full plate. You know, the inspiration for this conversation is you're one of the academic heads for the MSBA program. We have a head from Darden, and you are the McIntyre academic lead. And we wanted to have you on the podcast to talk more about the work that you're doing with the MSBA program. But before we get there, I think it'd be nice just to learn a little bit more about you and your research interests. And then we'll turn our attention to the MSBA program and the MS in Business Analytics program. Does that sound okay?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Jingjing Li. So I've been at UVA for 10 years, more than 10 years. So my research interest is in the area of AI, machine learning, and big data analytics. In the past, I have done research in the areas of consumer behaviors, healthcare, public policy. Now I have several generative AI ongoing projects and feel very excited about those.
Yeah, that feels like a very hot topic right now. Everybody's interested in AI. Obviously, a lot of money being invested in AI. Everybody's trying to figure out, is this a real thing? Is this another kind of bubble? I assume you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm very fortunate and very lucky this time, because when I started this research interest about 15 years ago, AI was not that hot, right? At that time, it's many other things like statistics and statistic machine learning is very hot. So I guess one takeaway is that just to stick to your passion, and if you wait for long enough, and you're gonna actually embrace your spring. So now it's the spring of my career. So essentially, I got a lot of questions. I attended many conferences, got invited to give speeches about AI. So my thoughts on that is, I would say the AI first strategy, right? So if you have any things in doubt, the best thing to learn is actually put your hands on and learn firsthand experiences. So imagine like in your work or even in your personal life, right? If you have any questions or any doubts about how to accomplish that, maybe think about, can I use maybe Gen AI or AI to accomplish that? Give it a try, right? So I'll give you an example. So as a mom of a 2-year-old and 5-year-old, so every day, one challenge I have to face is what to cook for them, right? Because, for those little kids, their tastes are very hard to predict. However, I also want to make sure they get nutrition. So therefore, I just ask ChatGPT, right? So this is a history. They know like what I have cooked in the past, and then ask them to generate some recipe that contains tofu or high in fibers or high in carb, and what are the recipes they can generate for me. And then based from that, I can start thinking about brainstorm some new ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. ChatGPT has those commercials now that are also on television about the many ways that you can use ChatGPT to enhance your life. I think just to kind of suggest, AI can be frightening, can be scary to folks, but these kind of practical applications, I think, make it feel much more accessible and maybe even friendlier to people.
Yeah, and I totally understand and respect people have very different opinions about AI. And I think our society, we should have diverse perspective. It's going to be very dangerous if everybody say like we need to embrace AI, right? However, before that, I would suggest that even if you have your own school of thoughts, but the first thing to defend your thoughts is actually to use it. right? And then you can have a deeper contextualized knowledge. And then you can actually really think about, do you want to withhold your perspective or you want to be a little bit more open-ended or flexible? But I feel like no matter what kind of attitudes you are, like AI fascination, AI anxiety, or AI hate, you're going to have to experience that and use that before you withhold your perspective.
I appreciate those points. I mean, what's interesting to hear your story. So you got interested in artificial intelligence, maybe 15 years ago is when you really started this work. It does feel like a lot of AI and Gen AI, conversation has really accelerated over the past 2 or 3 years with ChatGPT and other sort of technologies coming kind of into the mainstream. But this work has been going on for a long time. So what changed? Why now? Why is there so much energy around these topics now?
That's a very good question. I would say the history of AI is as long as the history of computers, right? Ever since the 1950s, people start to think about, can I use computer to do some intelligent things that human can do, right? And then at that time, so in my perspective, we can categorize human intelligence into 3 layers. The first layer is that you will be able to interact with the world. So that's why you see many AI applications are natural language processing, right? How do you converse with other people, or computer vision? Can you see the world, right? And the second level is you need to be able to do reasoning and planning. So basically, the computer needs to learn certain set of rules and accomplish something and make decisions. And the highest layer, in my opinion, is learning and adaptation. So basically, you can just learn and acquire knowledge autonomously, right? You don't need any instructions. You don't need any external intervention. So I would say that early AI applications a lot focus on natural language processing, computer vision, reasoning, and planning. Specific to reasoning and planning, the early technologies are rule-based AI. So essentially, like, for example, you interview doctors and to extract the rules behind their diagnosis, and then you build a system around that. But then people soon realize that you cannot create a comprehensive set of rules because many rules are fuzzy, right? There are a lot of gray areas. And also, like, the number of rules is actually massive. Like, you can't like fit this number of rules into the computer. So then that's why people turn to that data-driven techniques in the 1980s. So they say, like, because data actually encode people behaviors or actions or perceptions. So can we learn these rules from the data rather than we craft the rules beforehand? And that's why in the 1980s, statistics, like statistical machine learning, is on the emerge, right? So they start to learn. And at that time is that the neural network, the antecedent of, or the deep learning models, right? The fancy technology we see nowadays start to arise. However, the neural network back in the 1980s did not enjoy a huge success. So then I want to point to your question. That is because we have limited data, and more importantly, we have a limited computing power back then in the 1980s and 1990s. And then, so the neural network, the idea is that they look at the structure of our human brains, right? Human brain, you can consider it as a huge network. So we have these neurons, those are cells, and then they communicate with each other using the edges we call synapses. So then they say, like, we can actually, within the computer world, we can build such a network. But back in 1980s, we just didn't have the capability to build such a gigantic neural network. However, in the 2010s, and people kind of revisit that problem because at that time, right? Have you heard about, maybe you heard about the Moore's law, right? The computing power doubles in every 18 months, right? So we feel like we have reached the point that we have enough computing power and we recorded a lot of data from human behavior. And then people revisit that question in the early like 2000 or 2010, and they found that suddenly this type of algorithm, neural network, now we call that deep learning, they surpass a lot of the existing benchmarks. And that's why like AI nowadays come to the mainstream. So I feel like what has changed is the computing power and data. You have to reach a tipping point before you start to realize that, oh, these kind of methods can really represent human intelligence.
It's been interesting to follow the conversation around AI. I was really struck that a lot of the people who are out there talking about AI, let's say Sam Altman as an example, one of the things that came up in the interviews that he was doing, at least initially when ChatGPT was starting to gain traction, is around this idea about the dangers of AI and saying things like there's a non-negligible chance that AI could destroy the world. Right, that was something that would come up in these interviews. But then when you talk to people about like where is AI right now in terms of its compute ability to sort of do things, it's nowhere close to that. And I thought it was such an interesting communication strategy to start with this thing that is apocalyptic and at least suggests that this could potentially happen when you're trying to socialize, get people using this technology and sort of adopt it in their maybe everyday lives.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So there are three godfathers who won the Turing Award, right, for their accomplishment on AI and deep learning models. So specifically, Jeff Hinton. So he is actually worried about the future of AI, right? So his students actually is among the OpenAI board, but he left the OpenAI. So there are a lot of stories behind. People don't know. It's just the guesswork, right? And another famous researcher is the Yan LeCun. So he withhold more like a positive perspective, say like we are not there yet. We see many areas that AI cannot replace human beings. So I feel like it's really depend on the context, right? So we have so many application domains. And even in my own research experiences, I found certain highly vertical domains, such as healthcare. AI is not there yet. So we need to have human in the loop. We need to combine human knowledge with AI knowledge. But maybe in some areas, such as like a writing or art creation, maybe AI is very close. But I would say that it's really also dependent on your definition of AI. Do you see AI as an umbrella term for super intelligence? Right? If you consider that, I would say we're not there yet because we still have many, many application areas. AI is not there yet. But if you think AI is like a context application specific, I would say there are mixed answers, right? Some are even better than humans, such as like the AlphaGo, right? Many years ago already, 2016, AlphaGo defeat the world champions in this type of context. So again, back to my original AI first strategy. I feel like even many like AI researchers, they don't know what is a boundary. So that's why we want to open these AI products to the public domain, right? We invite everybody in the world to experiment on AI. And actually this use of AI going to continuously augment our understanding of AI, augment and extend our understanding about AI. So then we can really know like where is AI now?
Yeah, I think your point about boundaries is really interesting because there's this conversation that's really started to pick up around regulation too. About right now, it seems like it's mostly companies putting restrictions on how people can use these platforms and technologies. The regulatory environment is these are novel technologies, new technologies. The regulatory environment hasn't quite caught up. Do you feel like the regulatory environment can catch up? Because it's always this tension between regulation and innovation. It feels like these two things can be potentially at odds with each other. So how do you feel about that particular topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's not new for AI. Any technological innovation, we always face this tension between regulation and innovation. And usually technological innovation comes first. That generates a lot of use cases. And then suddenly anomaly arise, right? And then usually there is a big news on about these technologies, and people are shocked about the danger of the technology, and then regulation come after. So I would predict that for AI, it will be the same cycle, right? We're gonna see the emergence of a lot of innovations, and then we're going to see a lot of big negative news. And that actually very helpful for my career because whenever there is a negative publicity about AI, and I can get some people ask me and people invite me for a talk, say like, what is your opinion about that? Right. But then, so I would say that I will not blame like a regulation or regulatory department because even for the technical pioneers, we don't know, right? So if you think about it, for these AI technologies, those developers, those researchers, they develop the AI models. Usually we have like a closed set of a benchmarking data set, right? So this data sets, let's say Q&A data sets, can you, based on the question and provide answers, we compare with the human answers, right? So those are very limited, closed domain data set for us to kind of test the AI performance. And then we release the technology to the general public. And then there are gotta be like so many applications we will never imagine that people can use that, right? And then, so that's why that even for the AI researcher, we cannot provide a very useful guidance for the regulatory department, say like, oh, you need to be worried about that. You need to pay attention to here, because we are actually very limited in our vision and horizon. So I would say that there always this time period that you feel like it's very chaotic, right? You feel like you have a very mixed feelings about AI, but I'm sure that a regulatory department gonna catch up. So I think the EU AI Act and US, like the White House executive order, they already start to touch upon that. And at this stage, it's like umbrella general framework, right? It's kind of a define which areas we need to pay attention to, but it's not hasn't been to the tactical level in terms of like, oh, you need to be mindful about these specific set of consideration, like the gating factors before you release your products. But I feel like the regulatory department is also constantly evolving. I think as long as the strategic direction is that regulation, the leadership feels like the regulation is important in the AI. So then you put resources and human labor into that area. And I feel like ultimately it's going to close the gap, or maybe the gap is going to be smaller for people to tolerate.
I think it's a really interesting point. I think there's this interesting thing about the speed of business, the speed of innovation, and any regulatory framework that could be created. It feels like business or innovation is always pushing at the edges of any regulatory framework that might be out there and exist. So it really does come down to your board, the leaders in the company, also having a sense of how they want to operate ethically and what feels responsible, given the context in which they're working. I think that's something that is invariably, whether you're talking about AI or another industry, that's always present because of how businesses are incentivized.
Yeah, and I also want to follow up on that, right? I feel like it's very, very important to get all the people in the same room to discuss that. Because right now, what I'm seeing is that we have these like perfect bubbles and silos, right? We have those AI researchers and developers, they constantly knock on this like a technological frontier. And we have these business organizations, they push on the applications. And then we have the regulatory departments. And then if you go to these professional or academic conferences, you see these AI topics a lot. But it's very rare for me to see that we have legislation, regulatory department, practitioners, and academics. They sit in the same room and then they talk in a fashion that each other can understand with each other. And then, so I feel like having all the people, all hands on the table is very important to speed up the regulatory efforts. So I think if I'm any like AI leaderships, you need to actually thinking about all the stakeholders to put them together. Otherwise, it's like because regulatory framework is highly comprehensive, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary. Right. You will not have a good framework without the help of researchers, without the help of the users.
It seems like a good segue to potentially talk about the MSN Business Analytics program, a program that sits very much at the intersection of business and analytics, a lot of tools and techniques that students will learn, including artificial intelligence, machine learning. So I want to talk about, you've been teaching in this program for a number of years. You're now a leader of the program, but let's talk about your work just teaching in the program. You traditionally led Module 4. There's 5 modules in this program. It's a year-long program. What was Module 4 all about, or what is Module 4 all about?
So it's not surprisingly, Module 4 is about AI. So it's big data and AI. So I'm teaching the managing big data courses and Mod 4. For that, I'm basically showcase, for many of the AI applications, we are dealing with unstructured data, right? Meaning that we are not only dealing with numbers, but we're dealing with text and images and audios and videos. And with that type of data, how can you successfully manage those data, store, and make sure that the data access control, the privacy, everything is accounted for. So that's what I'm teaching. But as a Mod 4 coordinator, I'm also in charge of designing a mod project that bring all the courses that were taught in that mod together. So the project I focus on in the past few years is building an AI product for the healthcare domain. Because during that mod, we have managing big data courses, which I'm teaching, and also the AI course, like the deep learning and AI, highly technical Python type of courses. And we also have a product management courses. And I feel like this is a perfect triangle of those three factors for the AI product. Because for AI product, first of all, it's actually we don't start with technology. We don't start with models or data. We actually start with an idea, right? Can you identify a useful problem to solve, or like a interesting ideas, right? So basically the ideas behind the products. So the students, and then specifically to that project, I introduced the problem to them. It's related to one of my research is the adverse drug reactions. So thinking about in the ICU unit, the patients have comorbidities. They have multiple types of diseases, right? And then the nurses and doctors, and nurses usually at the front line to see the reactions of patients, and doctors prescribe medicines. And then without enough data, right, it's very hard to predict what kind of adverse drug reactions this patient may have, right? So, and then another problem for adverse drug reaction is that, so FDA has a full, very rigorous process to monitor, to make sure that before the drug released to the market, they have gone through multiple trials. And after however, the trials, usually they have to sample participants, sample patients, right? They do like A/B testing type of things to understand the treatment effect, efficacy of these drugs. But that is limited. Because you have to rely on a sample of people. What if you cannot recruit enough people from a certain demographic segments? Then you're going to cause unintended adverse drug reaction. So that's why after the drug were released to the market, FDA constantly do post-market surveillance, right? To basically understand like what are the potential unintended, untested adverse drug reactions. The existing mechanism is that they rely on self-report from doctors and patients, right? But imagine that our medical professionals, they're working around the clock. So usually their incentive to report is low. And then for the patient, even though they like to report, but if you actually look at the reporting system, it's multiple pages with a lot of technical jargons, right? So many patients may give up midway because they just can't understand these like the long jargons about the medical domain. So essentially, I present this problem to students, say, can we use AI and data to solve this problem, right? So let them brainstorm. And then the students say like, actually, you know what? Instead of like I report to the FDA system, I'm going to complain to my family and friends, say like, I took this medicine on depression, but that makes me even more depressed. Right. So that's kind of a description of adverse drug reaction. And people can also go to social media. They tweet about this drug, say like, oh, I don't like this drug. I don't trust this drug. Or they can go to the medical forums, right, to find some patient support group and to discuss different treatment options. So then we have this idea, say, can we use AI models to extract these signals from this massive amount of user-generated data on social media, forums, or etc. So that's basically the mod project. And then, however, they actually need to have a good product idea. If you do not have a self-discipline, you don't have a good product design experiences, you can go unlimited about the potentials. Then you will not be able to finish a project within 2 months, right? So that's why we need to bring the product development product management ideas into this mod. And then the next thing is that before you even create an AI model, you actually need to know which data to collect and how to store them, right? So if you connect to back what I said is like social media data, those are unstructured data. So that's why my course naturally contribute to this project. So they have to design a data collection and a storage management pipeline. And finally, they need to implement these AI models to extract these signals, right? So that's basically the mod project. But when I design this project, I make sure that those 3 courses and 3 factors, they are integrated to each other, right? You cannot just simply divide your team, say you are the product person, I'm the AI person, I'm the data person. Actually, you have to be all 3, but maybe you have a relative different focus, right, during this process of the project.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I know some of our listeners may be listening to this and saying, wait, I don't have background in any of these things. I've never done anything with artificial intelligence. I've never scraped a whole bunch of social media and tried to get it into an organized form. And product development, I have no experience with product development. What do you say to folks who do not have much background or interested in the topics and maybe also interested in the MSBA program? What would you say? What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I would say that even for the MSBA folks, right, before they get into the Mod 4, they know nothing about these courses. So for the MSBA students, the onus is on the professors to kind of distill this very difficult concept into an applicable, easy to digest format. And then I am very happy to see that all the students actually understand, even for the domain, the healthcare. We probably only have 1 out of the 55 students have a healthcare experiences. The idea to overcome that is that I ask them to do the interview. I ask them to shadow the doctor. And then they kind of understand how to build their empathy, right? So for non-MSBA audience, if you're interested in MSBA, you want to get a head-on on that, I would actually ask you to focus more on your experiences, on the application, the product management side, because all the data management and model creation are downstream tasks. If you couldn't identify a specific areas you are passionate about and also is a feasible product ideas, you will not be able to create any fancy AI products. So it always comes to who you are, what you are interested, and then also pay attention to your day-to-day lives, right? The experiences, and then follow these, for example, AI influencers, join some professional conferences and read news and articles about this AI, and then use that on a daily basis. So I feel like that is a way to get you started. And I'm always a big believer of learning by doing, right? Another thing is that learning by teaching. So what I encourage my undergraduate students to do is that I ask them to try ChatGPT or Gen AI tools to help with their homework on some like a limited. So I oppose some like policies, like when, where to use, but then I encourage them to teach each other, right? So this is my innovative prompt. This is my process. And then you join a learning community, and that is very important to learn from like-minded people. So then just a kind of plug in for the MSBA programs, we actually host a lot of like speaker events, right? We invite both Darden and the McIntyre schools do, right? So we have many of the special speaker series, and then many of them are actually open to the public, right? So be mindful about these events and go there. I feel like for me, like the biggest takeaway from those events are not about what the speaker said. Of course, sometimes because I sometimes like you got some fresh insights, but the most important thing is to find like-minded people. Just like you need to find your personal training buddy so that you constantly do your weight training every day, right? Because you know that there is another buddy there. Like if you don't record your steps And then you know that you're going to behind the leaderboard, right? You need to find that community to join.
I love that. I love that point. And in the MSBA program, these are all team-based projects. It's worth noting. You're not working by yourself. You have a team of people. Some folks may actually have direct experience with the things that you're working on, and everybody brings something to the team. And we have lots of people in the MSBA program from lots of different backgrounds. I think sometimes people focus on that analytics piece and the more technical ends of the program, but there's also a big emphasis in this program on communication and being able to take the data and tell a story with the data, to communicate with various stakeholders, to touch back on a point that you made previously. Why does this data matter? And to ultimately be able to socialize why it matters. That's not just about being able to use Python or SQL. It's about actually being able to explain to a lay audience who may not necessarily know technically everything that happened here, why this is important, what we should do about it, these kinds of things.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think communication, right now with the Gen AI, I feel like communication is even more critical. Thinking about how you interact with Gen AI is actually communication, right? So the people who benefit the most from the Gen AI is the good communicator who can write good prompts and constantly refine their ask. They are very articulate about what they want, and then they're going to get something from AI. If you are a mediocre communicator, you won't get so much. You're going to only get mediocre responses from Gen AI. So then back to the MSBA program, I feel like that is the biggest unique advantage of the MSBA programs, because we have communication faculty throughout the modules. And because like that is based on our view that communication is utmost important, especially in the analytics and AI field. And I think also like for many folks who are interested in the MSBA programs, they are typically working professionals, right? Imagine that like in your organization, if you can only just communicates with your computer using Python, you lose a lot of opportunities to really socialize your brilliant ideas to other people, right? So I feel like, however, it's very hard to do because usually it's different trainings, right? If you do deal with your Python codes or model, you need to do like attention to details. You need to make sure that you are very deep into these kind of ocean of the Python code, the syntax. However, for communication, you actually need to prioritize, right? For some areas, you need to emphasize more. For some areas, you only focus on the big picture. So that requires you to have a differential attention to different areas. But for coding, you actually need to have a high level attention to detail throughout. So those are very, very different skills. And I think what MSBA did a very good job at this is that we, as a model coordinator or faculty, we actually give you feedback about your presentation even before you present, right? So for example, for Mod 4, many students ask me like, you have this triangle. I like that idea, but I feel like they are so disconnected. So I actually sit down with each team, go through their slides, adjust the orders and adjust the content. And sometimes students say, I really want to show my Python codes for this model, the architecture, that's so fancy. And I say like, think about who is your audience, right? Maybe it's better to put that into the appendix slides. And in the main deck, you talk about your takeaways rather than the detailed journey. So I think that is this kind of importance of communication. Every faculty member understand that, and we are willing to put time to coach students to go through these obstacles.
The MSBA program is a joint program, partner program between the Darden School of Business and the McIntire School of Commerce. You are the McIntire academic lead, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, for the program. This is a new role for you. What's exciting to you about this role?
What I'm mostly excited about this program is actually this is a good timing to really think about our curriculum, right? So how can you continuously stay up to date with this Gen AI or AI trends, right? So so the first thing I did is that I'm For the Mod 1 residency in Charlottesville, I organized a Gen AI panel. So I invite those speakers. So one is Mark Polyak from Ipsos. He's a global data management, the head of global data management. And then Patrick Higgins, he's a partner as Willow Tree. So both companies are the frontier of the Gen AI applications. So what I'm thinking the most exciting is that I actually want to expose my students to this latest trends early on in the MSBA program. And then I use that as a way to collect their feedback. And then throughout these years, the students may go to faculty and say, oh, I want to see more of this content. Or I feel like I need to concentrate more on my communication, right? So I feel like this plant a seed to the students to highlight the importance of this Gen AI. And then throughout the year, we can continue with this communication. Then that's help us to reflect like what courses needs to keep, what courses need to be ditched, and what courses we can explore some new learning objectives because of these new AI technologies.
Obviously, AI is going to continue to evolve. It's going to change. How do you keep the MSBA program current with something that's moving this quickly, changing this rapidly?
Yeah, so I think like we are very fortunate to have these faculty members. They really have a growth mindset. They are not afraid of change a significant portion of their curriculum even on a yearly basis, right? At least I know like in my Mod 4, like all of the faculties are willing to change and adapt. So I think that says the faculty, the MSBA faculty, both from Darden and McIntyre, we're not afraid to change. And we are actually very passionate to learn new things. Even before Gen AI was the hot topic, we already instilled the Gen AI concept, the AI concept, the big data while ago, like long before the 2023, right, into the curriculum. It's just like we use a different terminology, right? Now we can say that's AI, but actually students already got exposure to that. So I feel like one is that we are not afraid of change. The second is that the expertise of this faculty will already like kind of stay ahead of the curve in terms of integrate AI into the latest curriculum. Another thing like we are experimenting on is that we need to think about some innovative teaching cases that will be influenced or facilitated by Gen AI. For example, Gen AI can be a very intelligent tutor, right? Or Gen AI can augment the knowledge that we don't have time to cover during the fast-paced module. So I think that's another area I want to focus on is that I want to encourage my faculty to rethink their learning objectives and try to integrate Gen AI into their teaching, and then to see what things we can accomplish. Yeah, so it's kind of a design thinking product development ideas, right? So design thinking, piloting, prototyping, and collect the feedback. And that's the kind of a unique nature about MSBA. So all the faculties on board on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things about MSBA is that this curriculum was developed expressly for this program. It's not like you go take a class at McIntyre, you go take a class at Darden. The faculty from both schools came together and designed this curriculum expressly for the MSBA, and it evolves. It's continued to change as new technologies are added, new tools, techniques come on. That it feels like it's very topical, very relevant, and it's a credit to the faculty for keeping up with tools and techniques and technologies that are changing so rapidly.
Yes, so I think integration is a big advantage of this program, right? So we are a believer of customized and personalized education. So that's kind of something we work on. Another thing is that we focus a lot on the feedback, right? So at the end of each mod, we're going to give them very comprehensive feedback for their project, qualitative, quantitative feedback. And we're going to write the grading memos for every single student, like a 3-page memo, all the way to as details as like for this particular assignment, what is your performance? And we believe that you need to work on this area, highly personalized. And we believe that if you keep this communication channel open, you give feedback to students, and students also give back feedback to you. And that is actually the forces for us to continuously drive the innovation for the MSBA program.
Well, just a couple more questions for you, Jingjing. One question that's been on my mind as we've been having this conversation is you've been interested in artificial intelligence for a long time at this point. What got you interested in artificial intelligence, and what has kept you interested in artificial intelligence for this entire time?
So initially, I was interested in AI because I'm interested in the text data. So when I did a project in my undergraduate years, and we want to build a knowledge expert system to extract insight from large scale publications, right? And before, what I all learned is how to deal with numerical data. So then when I face this textual data and I don't know what to do, and that's why I seek my PhD in the US, Colorado Boulder, they have a very strong NLP department. And then I learned all the techniques, history about NLP. And then now, so throughout the years, I developed and published a lot of NLP AI algorithms and models and applied them to many different areas. And now, 15 years later, what still keep me interested is in the applications, because I feel like, okay, once I develop a highly innovative algorithms, its use across different domains are still very uncertain. And as one area I'm especially interested is healthcare, because I really want to use this technology to solve societal problems, societal challenges. Of course, business problems are very important, but healthcare really touches my heart. And then if you think about healthcare, they have a different formats of data, right? Text and images and videos and audios and numerical data. And also it's both an art and a science, right? For the science part, everybody know, but it's also an art. It's a communication between doctors and patients and nurses and multiple stakeholders. Your wellness outcome is not purely driven on what medicine or treatment you're on. It's also, we found in the literature that trust in doctors is one of the most important predictor for your wellness outcome. So it's the empathy or relationship management with doctors. And then with that being said, if you only treat AI as a killer technology, you will never accomplish the desired outcomes in healthcare, because you really want to make sure that AI understand the ethics, the regulations, the privacies, as well as the needed relationship maintain or management between different stakeholders. So basically, you need to have an AI technology that is very warm, kind, and friendly. So that's why it keeps me very interested. Is on the one hand, AI need to perform. On the other hand, AI need to be empathetic, warm, and friendly, kind. How can you do that? So it is an unresolved problem.
I love all those points, and thank you for sharing that. It's clear you have a lot of passion for AI. One thing I want to call out from your bio, which folks may find on the McIntyre website if they're curious about reading a little bit more about your background, is that you also worked at Microsoft for a while before coming to the University of Virginia. You want to share a little bit more about the work that you did there? I think people might find it interesting.
Yeah. So I actually joined the Microsoft intern program in my fourth year as a PhD student, right? So back then, I spent a wonderful 3 months in Seattle. That's the most beautiful months, like May to August, no rain. And then I got the full-time offer after I graduated. So they actually waited for 1 year for me to graduate so that I can be a full-time employee at Microsoft. At Microsoft, we develop large-scale machine learning projects such as Xbox One. So Xbox One was released 2013 November. I was the data scientist team behind that Xbox One release. So we work around the clocks to make sure that the Xbox One actually have a lot of AI functionality, such as we have kind of a conversation in agents. You can talk to the Xbox One and ask Xbox One to recommend some games and movies and songs to you. So that's related to speech recognition and also recommendation system, etc. And many other projects work on like a Bing search engine and Windows Phone Cortana app. Yeah, so those experiences really expand my horizon about what AI can do. Another thing is that actually make me to be very appreciative about the big data, right? And the computing power we have nowadays is really expanded my horizon. And then because of that experiences, I was trying to think about that not only AI can build these cool products with billions of users. I think AI can also solve societal problems. And just like I said, I'm really interested in healthcare or at public policy, right? So I also study, like, for example, during COVID, what kind of public policy will be good, right, related to health outcome, etc. So that's why I think like I want to join academics, because I have the freedom to explore whatever societal challenges I'm interested. But I'm very appreciative of that experiences that prepare me very well for my current role.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Is there a hot topic in AI that's really captured your interest? You mentioned you're interested in healthcare, public policy, but anything, from the news or some of these recent stories in artificial intelligence or generalized artificial intelligence that has captured your interest?
Yeah, so I think like another area topics I'm interested is actually the Gen AI and the future of work, right? So people have this existential risk, threats, ideas, right? So it's basically like AI can replace them, displacement, or versus upscaling, descaling. So I think that is also a classic business problem, and that's worth kind of studying. And I want to say that study AI use in an organizational context is especially more difficult than study individual level AI use. So for example, if you only look at one person, how they interact with AI, that's relatively easy. You can use multiple methods like interviews and focus group or secondary data, field experiment, etc. But if you want to study in an organizational context, you have to think about that individual is embedded in the fabric of the organization, like culture, their power dynamics, right? Their organizational hierarchy, and then their reward system, incentives and the leadership style, etc. So there are so many confounding factors, and that can impact people's use, reactions, and perceptions of AI. And then I feel like we see a lot of differential outcomes, right? Even within the same sector, similar type of companies, you see company adopt very different policies for Gen AI. Some companies say like, we don't want to use Gen AI for various reasons, safety and privacy and access control. Those are all legit reasons. And those companies say, why don't we wait for us to create a proprietary AI model only with our company's data before we promote and broadcast the use of AI. And some company, even within the same type of genre, say like, okay, I encourage my employees to use AI and then share your innovative use, right? So you see this fascinating contrast. And right now we don't know who is right. And then what are the outcomes, right? For example, for the company who promote Gen AI use, once they found that Gen AI can actually increase the productivity by 100%, and then they can actually cut the labor force by half, right? What would they do? So there are a lot of unanswered questions. However, as a researcher for myself, I feel like it's very hard to get into the organization, to get the access, right? Because you really need to kind of sit there, you are touching with their company's proprietary and sensitive data. So I feel like that is a fascinating area. So right now I'm contemplating a research project that I want to look at how Gen AI is used in hospitals among medical professionals, and then to see like how the medical professional use Gen AI, for example, for their medical notes taking, right? And then how what are the what are their experiences and what are patients' experiences, and how would that vary by the culture and leadership style and organizational structure of that particular hospital. So I feel like those are very, very fascinating ideas I want to focus on. Yeah.
I appreciate your sharing all of that. It does feel like AI, there's so many different things you can look at, whether it's, the implications for the future of work. There's an energy component to this, right? Because we have to build all these data centers, and what does all that mean for the bigger questions around climate? I mean, there's so many things to look at here, and it feels like we're just kind of getting started with a lot of this work, even though some of this technology has been around for a while, but things have certainly accelerated here. Jingjing, thank you for answering all of my questions. We could have probably gone on for a lot longer talking about AI and generalized artificial intelligence, but we'll stop here. But thank you so much, and obviously best of luck. Exciting year ahead with the MSBA class. They are working their way through their first module or so.
Yeah, and I just want to conclude with one last sentence, right? For prospective MSBA students, right? As I said, there are so many exciting opportunities about AI. One of the important thing to do is to find like-minded people. And I feel like MSBA is such a learning community because we faculty, we're experts in AI, we're passionate about AI, and we also are not afraid of introduce AI into the classroom. And then because of this passion, I feel like your MSBA students gonna also have that kind of passion. So this is the right time to join some learning programs like that to really, really, really fresh and upskill your AI knowledge.
Thank you, Jingjing. I think that's a great place to stop. So have best of luck the year ahead, and really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
You too. Likewise. Thank you.
And that was my conversation with Jingjing Li, a faculty member at the McIntyre School of Commerce and one of the academic heads for the MS in Business Analytics program here at the University of Virginia. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, at virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.